If you're here to find out how organizations are working to protect the oceans, this is the episode for you because I have Healthy Seas Executive Director Veronica Mikos, who's here to talk about how her organization is helping to clean up ghost fish farms. That's right. There are companies who abandon their fish farms and don't clean it up. Even though they're supposed to, the law is not enforced. And while Healthy Seas is working with governments to make sure that this law is enforced, she's also working with their own organizations and partners to be able to clean up these ghost fish farms. She talks about Healthy Seas. She talks about everything that regards to cleaning up ghost fish farms and what goes into them on this episode of How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. And this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And this is Oceans Week, folks. You're in the mid time of Oceans Week. Oceans Day, June 8th, is a few days away, and we are talking about action today. It's a different sort of week this week. I'm posting every day this week, Monday to Friday, to ensure that you know what's happening with the oceans. Just trying to give you a different perspective of some of the things that are going on in the ocean. And today is a great day because we have the Executive Director, Veronica Mikos of the Healthy Seas organization, who is here to tell us about how their organization cleans up ghost fish farms. That's right. These are open pen farms that are in the ocean that have been abandoned by the company and not enforced to make sure that company takes out all the stuff that they've been using for decades before to create profit and sell fish and grow fish. Take it out of the bay that they leave it in so that the local community can get their bay back and make sure it's healthy. Veronica was great to be on the podcast. She was very transparent. She talks about how these projects, how the first project came to be, how she was vacationing in an island just in Greece, and how she met another environmentalist and they said, hey, you should take a look at this, knowing that Healthy Seas takes out ghost nets. But this one, they knew exactly who was responsible. They knew exactly where it was, and they knew they had to take it out. And it wasn't just the nets. It's all the other stuff that goes along with building and maintaining fish farms. And it's a really scary idea when people can put something in the ocean that's shared by a lot of other people and just abandon it and not be able to enforce it. And, Veronica mentioned that she's working with her Healthy Seas organization to ensure that the Greek government, where this took place, will enforce in the future this type of law. And so that is on the waiting. But while they're waiting, they're saying, hey, we just got to get this stuff out of here. And the first ghost farm is not the last ghost farm. And she just came back from cleaning up another one with her organization. And she's going to go back and clean up some more. This is, some of the nets have drifted into other bays or along the coastline. Others are just in the bays. It seems like there are a lot more than what we first realized, and Healthy Seas is working to do that, not just in Greece, not just in Europe, but all over the world. So before we get to Veronica's interview, I just wanted to say, hey, just to let you know, if you want more information like this, and you want it all in one spot, but you're kind of sick of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and you don't want to go to all the different places to get this type of information, well, you're going to want to sign up for the waiting list for my Ocean app. That's right. It's an ocean community app. It's there to keep all the stuff that I put on online, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a video, whether it be a TikTok, whether it be Instagram. I'm going to put all that content in one spot so you get to listen to that. Also, I'm going to have some other features that you're going to like, sustainable products that you can buy. Not just that I have, probably some affiliate links in there, but not the ones that I produce, of course. But this is going to be just so you can have a better time and easier time finding sustainable products and finding products that are good for you, good for your family, and good for the ocean as well. And then there's going to be live Q&As and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be really great. I'm getting the app designed as we speak. Should be ready mid-July, but I'm going to be providing some updates. And you can sign up for that Ocean app very quickly, all you have to do is go to speakupforblue.com/ocean app, APP, all one word. That's speakupforblue.com/ocean app, APP, all one word. Now, here is the interview with Veronica Mikos from Healthy Seas, talking about how her organization cleans up ghost farms. Here's the interview. Enjoy, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Veronica, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about cleaning up ghost nets in the ocean?
Hello, Andrew. Glad to be here. Looking forward.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. This is a really important topic to me, as I've never really seen people talk about this. I've seen people talk about like ghost net cleanups, but not from old fish farms or abandoned fish farms. This is new information to me when I saw this on your website, and when your communications manager and I connected over LinkedIn. Samara, we talked about this, and I was like, this is new to me. I didn't think this was a thing. So we're going to get into, why these nets have been abandoned, why haven't they been cleaned up by the fish farms themselves, and the work that you and your organization does to be able to, this is a lot of work to be able to get these nets out, as well as all the other infrastructure that goes along with it and waste that goes along with it, and the volunteers that you have, the sponsors that you have. We're going to get into all of that. I'm looking forward to that. But before we do, Veronica, why don't you just let us know who you are and what you do?
I'm Veronica from Healthy Seas, director of the foundation, and already since 11 years, we've been focusing on plastic pollutions, more specifically ghost nets in the seas and oceans.
And now with Healthy Seas, how did you get involved with Healthy Seas? Were you a founder? Did you get involved after it was founded? How did that all come about?
I've been involved since day one. I used to work for the organization, which was one of the funding partners. And at that time, Healthy Seas started as a project, as an idea, as an initiative. We didn't know if it's going to last for a year or two. So it was a matter of trying and figuring out if there is a partnership, a public open to this. And now we are a separate legal entity since a few years. So
Wow.
I've been there since day one.
That's amazing. So, you said it started off as a project, and a lot of these organizations start off as an idea. A couple of friends get together, a couple of colleagues get together, and they say, hey, we should start this because, this is something that we need to get going, and it would be really fun to do so. How did that tell us how that all began? Like, where did the idea come up from? Who else was involved? And then how did you get started? Because this is primarily Europe, but it's an international scope, but it's focused. A lot of the efforts are focused in Europe, but lately I've seen Pacific Ocean projects and so forth. So just kind of give us that starting conversation.
Indeed. At the moment, we are operational in 20 countries in 4 continents, or in 7 regions, if you like. So Asia, America, New Zealand, and Europe. It all started with a good idea, indeed. And if you like, it's been like pieces of puzzle coming together. So we knew about a group of divers in the Netherlands at the North Sea, which been regularly going to shipwrecks. They like to dive as wreck divers, and they found those shipwrecks polluted by ghost nets. So they started to clean it up in their own free time, but they didn't know what to do with the nets. So the nets have been sent to landfill or incinerator. And after doing it for a year or two, we got to know an Italian company manufacturing nylon yarn out of fishing nets. So basically, we reached out to them asking, would you be interested in cooperating with the divers, receiving materials from them? And the third party at the funding being a sock manufacturer, which wanted to source the material, the nylon yarn made partly out of fishing nets and other nylon waste. So basically, these 3 partners came together, and then during the very first meeting, the idea of Healthy Seas, a journey from waste to where, has been born.
Unreal. So it all came from just some divers who want to help clean up the ocean. And then figure out, hey, this is either going to waste or incinerating. Okay, let's figure out a way to do this. How do we recycle? That's amazing to be able to do that. Now, to go from, I'm familiar with the process of creating a project and getting funded and starting a nonprofit organization in North America, but in Europe, what's that? Is it a difficult process to do to get that project going from a project to a separate entity?
It's been. We really didn't know what to expect. Will this project last for a year or two? or maybe longer. And regardless, Healthy Seas being born or not, these three parties, which I mentioned, who funded this initiative at that time, were already doing good things separately from each other. So what happened is that by coming together, we further strengthen and inspire each other. And whether we will be able to create waves around us or we're going to remain just the three enthusiastic parties, that's something which we didn't know. And the waves came, and it came so good that thanks to Aquafil, the yarn manufacturer in Italy, they have a network of fashion, carpet, textile brands which have been using the material they produce, the nylon yarn, for different products. And they basically backed us up. So they agreed to become partners of Healthy Seas, support us with a donation. Wow. And thanks to this donation, we could implement three types of activities. On the one hand, sea cleanups with divers. On the other hand, working on the prevention with the fishing industry to collect end-of-life nets waste on land, because otherwise it would be just like we are mopping the floor with an open tap, right? So we found it very important from the first beginning that we have this two-way approach, cleanups and prevention. Yep. And on the top of it, we put a lot of emphasis on education and awareness-raising activities with children, young professionals, general public, so to spread the message.
Yeah, that's amazing. To be able to launch three projects like that, that is quite the challenge to do, to be able to do that, especially as you're just getting started in this area. I mean, you've had 1 or 2, maybe even 3 years experience, and then to be able to up level that to say, okay, now we're scaling it to 3 different programs. Was, the nets, getting the nets out of the water is a logistical nightmare just in general, because it's so heavy. You're dealing with under the water. How does that program work, especially in all these different places? You mentioned earlier you knew divers who were doing it. Do you work with a network of divers on a volunteer basis to get those nets out?
Exactly. So we are working with a diving team called Ghost Diving. They are all over the world. They are skilled technical divers, which means that they have their own equipment, very high-level certifications, many years of experience, and they basically donate their skills and their time for this environmental cause. And why they do that? Because at one point you could imagine that once you have seen all the wrecks or all the fish you want to see, you get bored. You want to do something good. You want to make yourself useful, give back with your time and passion and knowledge instead of just going home and feel good. So in a way, the underlying motivation is for them to be useful. And this is where interest matches with possibilities. So with Healthy Seas, we are connecting marine protection, volunteer divers to the recycling industry. We raise funds, we deal with communication. So basically we arrange the projects in the background very intensely and often for a very, very long time. So the actual cleanup takes place a few days or maybe a few weeks, but we have been working for about a year, for example, on a project before in the background. So this way we complement each other.
Yeah, I've seen it before with divers, especially experienced divers, maybe not with the technical skills as the ghost divers, where they, you see them cleaning up as they dive. If they see a fishing net or like smaller fishing net or something like wires that have been discarded from a boat, they will cut them out if they're stuck, and then they'll take them back with them. They have like their own little sack to do that. So you see that. So I love about the scuba diving community is that the people who do that and they see the dives, as many as, hundreds, maybe even thousands of dives in their lives, they want to leave it, pristine so that they can come to dive again and have others dive as well. And I just love that about that community. So I'm so happy that you're able to tap into that community. Were you a scuba diver before all this? Like what was your connection to the ocean before this? Was it through scuba diving or snorkeling or recreational?
I started diving after Healthy Seas started. So now I
Okay.
can also join occasionally some of the projects when I have
Yeah.
time and there's space on the boat. But
Yeah.
my connection to the seas and oceans has been always that I found the peace, happiness there, even just walking along the shore. And I could always stare at the horizon and connect to eternity in a way that I felt the
Yeah.
freedom while being by the sea. So even if I don't dive, I go with a stand-up paddleboard or kayak. I can never leave nothing along the coastline. If I see something, I just pick it up and I
Right.
tow it with my whatever equipment I have. So I think it became a
Yeah.
sort of addiction that like to see a clean
Yeah.
place left behind, no matter if it's on the shore or underwater.
Yeah, I find as you work in this field, whatever field you're working, as long as you're working in the ocean, a lot of people tend to get that way. You come a little bit more prepared to the ocean to have like a little sack to put stuff in, like whether it be microplastics or potentially parts of a net or some small items that you can carry, drag behind a paddle boat or something. I think it's part of that evolution of being in around. And I imagine with healthy seas, you're even more hyper aware of everything that happens, like even like the smallest of microplastics. You know what belongs and what doesn't belong from the cleanups. So let's get into some of these cleanups. It must be like frustrating one to see nets go in and see nets in there. Are they mostly nets? We're here to talk about. We're eventually going to talk about fish farms, but are they mostly nets from fish farms that you help clean up, or are they just nets that have been identified maybe by the diving community or someone that's been on boat that you've had, like maybe another fisherman that you have connections with? How are those? Like, what is the sort of the percentage of nets that have been just discarded by fishing communities or fish farm nets that you guys clean up at this point?
Most of the nets we find all year round and also until now in our history are ghost nets. Ghost nets are
Hmm.
lost, abandoned, or otherwise discarded fishing nets which keep catching and killing marine life without human involvement. That's probably the short way to explain it. And
Yeah.
also one of the factor of these nets is that the owner is unknown in most of the cases.
Mm.
So at least in Europe, what we know that fishermen are not losing these nets or dumping these nets on purpose because it's their equipment. So you also don't want to
Right.
lose your microphone or pen or whatever you work with, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
but because they go closer and closer to objects to fish with the hope of bigger catch, which can be a shipwreck, which can be a reef, they take higher risk, and often due
Hmm.
to this, the nets get stuck and they have to cut it or they just lose it completely. Um, if you look at regions like Africa, Asia, where we also operate a little bit, there is higher percentage of illegal and unregulated fishing activities. And when these fishermen
Right.
are chased by the Coast Guard or authorities or other environmental groups, then they cut off these nets, so they just get rid of the evidence of the crime, basically. So
Mm.
there can be various reasons why these nets end up in the seas and oceans. And one of the main reason is also the weather conditions. Often there is just a
Right.
storm which is destroying the equipment and things like that. So that's what we have been focusing on until recently. And a few years ago, we got to know a phenomena, which now we call phenomena. At that time, we thought it was just an exceptional case called ghost farms.
Right. And that's where it's well, can you explain what a ghost farm is essentially? Because I find this really interesting and almost frustrating in a way. But can you just kind of explain the sort of what you define as ghost
Yes,
farms?
it's not a term you can find in Wikipedia yet, or many hits in Google, but it's a working term we developed. So with ghost farm, we call actually abandoned fish farms, which are left
Mm.
behind. And you can imagine not only at sea with all the rings and nets and whatever facilities they had, but even on land. So when a company goes bankrupt, or is being abandoned for whatever legal, financial, any reason, they just leave everything behind. And this is what we started to call ghost farms, because they are still there. They exist like a ghost in the area.
Yeah.
So that's where the term is coming from.
That is unreal to have that, because at one point, these ghost farms were owned by, or these farms were owned by a company. They were operated by a company, maybe many different companies over their time, and then all of a sudden they're just stuck there. Now, we've heard of this happen before with companies on land. You know, you get oil and gas companies that leave their waste, and the government doesn't make them clean it up. And unfortunately, like, they go hidden sometimes where people don't get to identify them. That's a problem we're having now in Canada until it's too late. Here, I mean, how did you discover? You said the first one you saw, you were hoping it was like more of an exception to the rule. So how did you come across this first ghost farm, and where was it? Can you just kind of give us a little description of that project?
So we've been in Greece in 2020, setting up a project in COVID times, which was not easy at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
No, I can imagine.
we cleaned up one of the biggest submarines of the Second World War from ghost nets. And that was in the Ionian Islands in Greece, in Kefalonia. And the neighboring island, Ithaca, we just really came over for 2 days of holiday to recover from all that big project. And then we met a local environmentalist, a dive center owner there, who was just literally telling us, I've seen you guys, what you are doing. It was in the news. Congratulations.
Yep.
If you want to clean up something really big, these were his words, if you want to clean up something really big, we got a fish farm here. Okay, I didn't quite understood what he means by a fish farm. I've never heard or seen anything like that before.
And a fish farm, like, again, like, it was owned by somebody. It was a company operated it, and this my understanding, and you can give me more detail. This project was essentially an abandoned. You know, the company went out of business or decided to leave this fish farm at some point, but it kind of continued to keep that infrastructure. So all the pieces, so the nets. This was an open pen fish farm, meaning that it was in the ocean. There were nets in the ocean, a series of nets in the ocean that you could identify from the air, you know, from either satellite imagery or from a plane of some sort. Can you give us sort of detail of what you found when you went to the site?
Exactly. So one of the big difference compared to a ghost net we find randomly anywhere, or a ghost farm, is that the ghost farms once had an owner, so it's known. With the ghost net, we don't know.
Right.
And the other difference is the scale of the pollution. We are not talking about one single piece of fishing net, but complete facilities being abandoned with scattered waste on the surface, covering coastlines of hundreds of meters, sometimes kilometers. So what we have seen was really, really shocking. From the distance, the coastline and the rocks looked white. So we thought, okay, that's white pebble. Till we went closer and we could see that that's the styrofoam, the polystyrene material degrading inside the pipes of the fish farm. They use this material. If you want me to name number one evil material of a fish farm, then this white poison, which is covering the coastlines in the sea. It's tiny particles floating, and the fish thinks that it's food. It looks exactly like fish food, so it's very harmful, polluting both on land and at sea.
Yeah, and and that polystyrene, you know, it's essentially these. Does it float or does it sink? Because they're pretty light when they break off, right?
Floats.
It floats. So it's floating at the surface. So you're just seeing this at the surface, and fish are sort of taking nibbles at it because they think it's food. So they're ingesting it, goes in their system. And of course, we know with bioaccumulation, smaller fish will eat the smaller things, bigger fish will eat the smaller fish, and so forth. And it just kind of goes up the food chain. And that, like you said, it's a nasty substance that has a lot of chemicals in it. As it breaks down, gets into fish tissues. If we eat it, it'll get into our tissues at even a higher concentration because it continues to just sort of accumulate through the bodies. So when you see this, you see not only the nets, but you see this white shiny thing from the surface. Uh, what were your thoughts? Were you just immediately, you and your colleagues were like, no, no, we're going to clean this up. Like this is something that we can do, or is this you're like, how come the fish farmers that own this? Why didn't they clean this up? Like that must have gone through your mind, right?
Yes, many, many times. So once we saw all this, including the polystyrene, the plastic pipes, rings, we dealt with 24 big fish farming rings with a diameter of 16
Oof.
meter each.
Wow.
Lots of nets, all kinds of waste. So my first question was, oh God, what did we just start? How can we clean this up in the time of 8 days, which was scheduled for that project at
Yeah.
that time? And this fish farm has been, imagine, like this for 10 years. So we didn't arrive a few weeks after it went bankrupt. The local
Right.
government, the municipality brought this issue to the national government. Several social media posts, the locals asking, crying for help, and simply no one did nothing. So
Mm.
authorities, ministries, police, coast guard, they did what they could to some extent, but
Hmm.
that some extent
Hmm.
did not reach the point of cleaning it up. The owner is gone. There is debt
Yeah.
on the facilities, lawyers and court cases, a long list of lawyers and court cases dealing with it, and it's just left behind and waiting and waiting. So what we did is we've been talking to the regional government, which issued originally the permit for this fish farm, that they confiscated the facility, became
Okay.
the public became the owner of it. And then this regional government
Hmm.
gave a license, a permit for us to clean it up. But you could question, why is it the role of an environmental non-profit to do all this? Eventually, why we did it? Because we wanted to show to everybody that it's possible, first of all. Second
Yep.
of all, we didn't do it alone. We had the volunteers from Ghost Diving. We had the regional government backing us up with papers. We had other local nonprofits joining. It's been really a showcase project also in terms of the collaboration and the
Hmm.
sponsor who stood behind us and who said, okay, I care about this. I will enable you this. So it's been thanks to many, many partners that we managed to organize that very first cleanup.
And I think also, like, as someone who has been in conservation for the past 20 years, I think it's like, who else will do it? If nobody's done it so far, it's been 10 years, right? And then you come along and you're like, well, we've got experience doing this kind of thing. As frustrating it is, as the company should have taken it out, at some point somebody's got to step in and just be like, we're going to do this because it needs to be done, and nobody else will. We need somebody to be able to do this, and it seems as though Healthy Seas specializes in this, so we're going to get it out. And that I commend you for that, because I think at you have to lead by example, showcasing how, it's not just you as an organization that wanted to get it out. It's the government wanted to get it out. The technical divers, the ghost divers that wanted to, all the volunteers, everybody. It seems like the community came together and said, you know what, let's get this out of here. And you lead the way, and we'll follow and help out. And I think that is commendable. I think that's where a lot of marine conservation organizations have to go these days, is to just kind of show by example that it can be done. Or else it just gets stuck in limbo and paperwork of who's responsible and who needs to take it out, and that could take years. And as you mentioned, the damage is already being done just with the polystyrene foam just floating at the surface. So somebody had to do it quickly, and I'm glad that you did. Now, how long does a project like this take to clean up? And I mean, this was not long ago. So is this a project that's still going on?
The cleanup was faster than the preparations. So to get things done, finances, legal, project partners, we really opened it up, and this was with international, national nonprofits, public administration, private sector, even the fish farming industry joined. Can you imagine? Because
Wow.
it is also reputational damage for the active fish
Yep.
farming facilities or fish
For
farmers,
sure.
which are already under a lot of pressure anyway. And then on the top of this is just reputational damage for them, that irresponsible fellow fish farmers leave pollution like this behind. So at the very first cleanup, we were not experienced enough for this, but we were enthusiastic. So, and passion and enthusiasm can pull you through on that tipping point when you feel like crying and you don't know what to do. So, because it was, the project took place in 2021, the very first cleanup, and that was still with very strict COVID regulations in Europe and in Greece.
Right.
We couldn't travel there and check exactly everything, so we relied on photos and videos which we got from the locals. Now, when we arrived on site, we saw that the problem is 10 times bigger than it looks like on the photos. And that's where we felt crying, but okay. We overcame that part, and we really, really pulled ourselves together, and just within 8 days, we removed 78,000 kilos. Maybe you can convert it into pounds.
No, kilos is fine.
78,000 kilos of fish farming related waste from one single bay and coastline. It's not only a problem for marine life from all the pollution, but also for the local community. So as you can imagine, it's a navigational maritime safety. So the locals couldn't use their boats in the area, and especially not at night, because there's been submerged pipes floating all over the island. So it's spreaded in the area. And also because it's a very negative impact on tourism, something these remote island communities live from, pretty much the only thing they live from. So there's been negative impacts on the local community, the society, and on marine life as well. And that's the reason why we said, okay, we heard the stories, we know who is responsible, there is the finger pointing to each other between authorities, let's just clean it up, let's show them that it's possible. That's how it started.
And I love it. It's amazing how it doesn't take long to clean up. Obviously it's a lot of work, a lot of people involved. As you said, the order of magnitude grew because it looks so much bigger than the pictures, and having the challenge of just COVID in general, planning around COVID, was, I think now we look back at it and be like, oh, well, it's everybody had to plan around COVID, and we all know, that it must have been difficult, but it's even worse than what we probably thought, trying to get, going around not around, but working within the regulations of each country, because they're all different, especially Greece. And I'm sure the municipal governments, like the island governments, might have been even more concerned because it's a smaller community. So the restrictions are tighter. The pandemic was serious. We all know that. So that's difficult. And then you get there and all of a sudden, because you couldn't see it all the time. So you had pictures and videos, but then you get there and you're like, oh my gosh, this is massive. And you're just like, holy, now we need more people. Okay, let's work on this. And then within 8 days, in and around there, you get it all cleaned up. That's amazing. And if people want to find out more and see what it was like to clean it up, I'm just going to, point people, I'll put it in the show notes, but point people to the Journey to Ithaca, the documentary. It's a great documentary. It's about 15 minutes long, really easy to watch. I want people to kind of take a look at it, because when I think about cleaning up a fish farm, you think about the open pen nets and taking out the nets. You don't think about the infrastructure that goes along with that. You don't think about sort of the metal pipes, like you mentioned, or the plastic pipes that were there that you have to take out and that you have to dispose of, and the trucks that were required and all that stuff. And then even I saw somebody vacuuming along the shore, probably I assume it's the polystyrene, like, pieces that were broken up along the shore. There's that as well. And all the divers and this is not just regular scuba diving we're talking about for recreationals. Like, this is not beginner diving. This is something that is a serious, as you mentioned before, Veronica, like the technical diving that takes a lot of work. So I highly recommend the video for people to go look, and you just go to the show notes to take a look at that, because this is bring a lot of people together and a lot of, like, technically driven and passionate people to help the oceans to take that out. And, that was your first fish farm that you cleaned up. You just came back from another project, where it was a ghost fish farm. Can you talk about sort of that project, where it was and how that came about?
Indeed, once we did this, what we call now first cleanup, we thought this was once and never again. we were really happy. We were really happy for two things. First of all, we managed to clean up what we promised to clean up without seeing exactly how big it was. So that was right. one happiness. Yeah. And the second happiness was that we were 10 different nationalities traveling to this small remote island, different partners coming together with very strict COVID measurements. So the second happiness was that we didn't get into the headlines of the newspaper after the project with a COVID outbreak, which the whole island community was worried about. What are all these foreigners doing here?
Right. That's true.
So after that, we thought, okay, this was nice. Let's go back home, relax a bit, and continue the work as usual. And what happened in the upcoming weeks is that we started to get calls from other local communities with a hashtag #MeToo. There is also a ghost farm here and there. Can you help? What do you think? And that's when we looked at each other. Oh my God, this is not just a case, an accident on its own. There is a pattern here.
Right.
So we started investigation. We talked to many journalists, lawyers, government officers. It really been endless months, and now I can say years of investigation that we could map the problem, because there's been no scientific data until now, except the ones we collected ourselves. You can read nowhere about it. So all over Greece, in Europe, we find these ghost farms, and we also know a similar situation in Latin America, in Chile. So I can't say that it's only one country in the whole world, but in any case, this is not something you easily find elsewhere. So it's very specific, which has to do most likely with the legal situation of the country, with the involvement of the authorities, and with governmental processes, because there's been also bankrupted facilities both at sea and on land in different countries. But there are different regulatory measures in place. Governments or the respective authorities are confiscating properties, processing it, cleaning it up, selling it at auctions. I don't know. There are different ways to tackle this.
Yeah, for sure.
But what we have found in Greece made us forced to continue. So we didn't stop at the first cleanup only. We just finished another huge operation actually 2 days ago.
Wow. And so where was this operation?
This took place along the coastline in western Greece. We've been running surveys last year together with local partners and identified 150 locations within 450 nautical miles, with scattered waste from aquaculture sector. You can imagine smaller pieces, bigger pieces, and complete abandoned facilities as well. So we just cleaned up one of these complete abandoned facility again, and picked up some other, I would say, scattered fish farming related waste at different locations as well.
So are we just talking nets, or are we talking again the polystyrene waste, the pipes, things like that have just drifted from abandoned fish farms? Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. Again, everything. So all inclusive. What we
Right.
what we also seen is that how the wildlife starts to interact with this styrofoam on the beaches. The ants are somehow eating it up or building their nest in it. It attracts butterflies.
Interesting.
We've been really surprised about the huge amount of butterflies on the beach till we smell that sweet smell of that degrading plastic. So we didn't got the official explanation yet from scientists, but it's attracting many animals, not only at sea, and not in a good way.
Right. Not in a good. It's never in a good way. Now, obviously, that's a lot of material to take out. This was this the cleanup after Ithaca? This was the first, or this was like your second cleanup, like of an abandoned fish farm, like
we did in 2021 and 2022 in Ithaca cleanups at 2 different abandoned fish farms.
2 different.
Now the island is almost clean, I guess, and then opposite on the mainland, along the coastline, there are a lot more waiting, and one of these we took now. So if you like, this was number 3, what we did now.
So and what have you learned since the first one? The first one, obviously logistical nightmare just because of COVID and everything. Things have opened up a little bit more in different places. What have you learned in terms of the cleanup that has made things easier as you take on more of these fish farms? We
learned to have the correct machinery with us. So the type of boats with cranes, or on land, the trucks with cranes, skilled workers who can cut with a chainsaw these pipes. Obviously, the divers are working underwater, lifting the nets, but all the other material needs to be taken. So it's a really complex task to do this running parallel. We have to be time and cost efficient because we are an environmental organization. We don't have unlimited resources. Both time and money is precious. So we really have to have these cleanups the best possible way for the environment and for economy as well. What we learned and why we don't stop, because it's an environmental crime. It's injustice for the society, for the local community. It's something we cannot just let happen. So we don't do the cleanups anymore, just for the sake of the cleanup, as we did the first one. We do it now for advocacy, awareness raising, and that's why I'm also very grateful to be here today, so we can talk about it, and more people will learn about it. So we should speak up, and we should just not let it go. In all the countries where this phenomena exists, and maybe one of the listeners can tell us if also know about their country, is that we have to not let things go. We have elected politicians, we have authorities, governments supposedly taking care of us. So this kind of injustice, environmental crime cannot happen.
Agreed. I completely agree. And with that said, you're looking at, you're leading by example. You're raising awareness through these documentaries and by videoing and taking pictures and speaking to the people around you and having all those volunteers participate. So from a local level all the way to scaling it to the internet now, which anybody can see. And hopefully, here with this podcast, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, I never even thought about that. I would have always expected the fish farms to have to put that together. So can you talk about the legality of fish farms? Are there, like, especially within, it seems like Greece has been a focus right now for you just because of the experience with the government. Have you had conversations with local governments as well as the federal government to say, how can we get around this? How can we make, if a company is a fish farm, is it in the law right now that they have to clean it up, or is it just not covered in the regulations for fish farming?
Indeed, we've been in very close contact with the local, regional, and federal government as well. The law is in place. The implementation is missing. And why is it missing, or why the law enforcement is missing? That's the question. I've heard
Yeah.
experts saying that the best would be if in the future, at the opening of any new facility, they put an amount of money in deposit.
Yeah, like a
Yes,
security
like
deposit, right?
when you rent a
Yeah.
room and the landlady is asking you to pay for
Right.
2 months in advance,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
now we know the cost of the cleanups. Now we know the effort it takes. It's very easy to put a price on it, and ask
Yeah.
fish farming companies to have this deposit in place. If they don't clean it up themselves, then let's say the government or the authorities are going to take this money and spend it on the cleanup itself. It sounds easy in theory, but why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think this is a great example because, like you said, you know the cost of it. You know what's logistically needed in terms of the equipment, in terms of the people, in terms of the skills that are required. And now it's just a matter of putting together, that to give to the government, having that relationship with the government to say, okay, we need to implement. You need to enforce this. It's a law. It's on you to enforce it, to make sure that these fish farms have to do their duty. If they're going to come in and they're going to create this, or they're going to take it over, it's their responsibility, right? Like it's like when you're a kid and your parents put dinner together. Well, you have to help clean up. If you don't, well, the parents will enforce it on you. If you don't clean up, there's penalties to pay. And there should, like you said, there should be some sort of security deposit to get that going. I think that's really, really important in doing that. And we've seen this happen before, where governments have been sued because they don't enforce the law that they've made. They haven't put things in place. We just did an episode on marine protected areas, and looking at, there's a study that came out. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at it, but there's a study that came out where the largest 100 MPAs have 90% of them haven't been properly implemented. That means the funding hasn't been there. The pieces that need to do to enforce the MPA hasn't been put into place. And then eventually what's going to happen is governments are going to get sued because they said, we made this big announcement, we showed that we're going to do it, but now they haven't been able to do it. And I feel like the consequence for governments not to implement or enforce the laws is that, obviously, we don't want to get to that position, because Healthy Seas wants to have a great relationship with the government. When you speak to the different levels of government, what are their responses, or do they have enthusiasm to try and get this enforced now that they've seen what goes into the cleanup and that it can be done?
In short, the Ministry of Environment has in Greece and also in other countries something called an office which is examining environmental crimes, and they do agree that it's an environmental crime. The best thing they could advise us was to go to the police, file a report, maybe together
Right.
with the local municipality, and then this office will investigate the details.
Right.
Which is fine, but then in practical terms, it means a lot of time and money, and again, years at court. So it's not that we want to add another procedure on the top of the other. So it is not like we want to add another procedure on the top of the other 5 running procedure by doing this. So we decided to go another path. The cleanup is not the goal, or not the only goal, like I mentioned. The cleanup is a tool to raise awareness and find ultimate solutions to this problem. We don't want to be, and we cannot be, the cleaners of ghost farms forever, right?
Yeah, for
But
sure.
we will continue to take action, not only with cleanups, but also community involvement, advocacy, educational programs we run around it with university students who will be the future aquaculture engineers and workers. So we do many different type of activities around the cleanups in order to place this ghost farm topic in a good position and find, again, like I said, ultimate solutions to this.
I love it. I think it's something that is definitely needed. And it's amazing how going on vacation to the island of Ithaca turns into what is what seems to be a focus point, and obviously much needed focus point, to be able to clean up any of these ghost farms. Have you met or known any other colleagues that have had similar that have done similar things as Healthy Seas in other countries around the world that you've engaged in? Have other people's identified this and other organizations helped do the cleanup that you can, help share information with or get knowledge from them as well as share knowledge that you've accumulated?
We have a lot of like-minded people in our network, both as team members, volunteers, and also as business partners. So one of our partner from Germany called Bracenet, they are making various
Mm-hmm.
accessoires, bracelets, keychains, dog leashes from fishing nets and ropes. A lovely couple who went on a holiday to Zanzibar and few years ago, and that's when they faced the ghost net problem with all the fishing nets washed ashore. They had the flight booked and luggage booked, so the best thing they could do is they left all their clothes behind. They gave it to the locals and filled up the luggage with fishing nets from the beach. And
Oh my
they established a
gosh.
startup company when they went back to Germany,
Wow.
manufacturing items from these fishing nets for awareness raising purposes and for raising
Wow.
funds for our work with Healthy Seas and ghost diving.
Yep.
So we do have these stories around us,
Mhm.
even if it's not specifically connected to ghost farms only or always.
Yep.
We do have dedicated people and friends around.
Well, it's also nice to know that products can be made from these ghost nets. So it's not only just disposing them, or as you mentioned at the beginning, where we were incinerating them. It's a matter of how can we reuse these ghost nets? Not only take them out so they're not harmful to marine life, but also to be able to use them so they're not just taking space in our landfills or causing more pollution, air pollution by incinerating them. To be able to have companies like this company in what's the name of the company? Sorry, Monica?
Bracenet. Bracenet.
Bracenet. Yeah, just to have bracelet. What a great name because they do bracelets. That's awesome. But to have the companies like that where you can, it's a talking piece as you wear it. You have a bracelet and be like, oh, what's that bracelet? Oh, it's actually made of discarded fishing nets, ghost nets, and we've saved a turtle, we've saved a number of different species because these are out and on my arm instead of being entangled in the gills of another fish, or strangling and suffocating a sea turtle or a dolphin or another marine mammal. And so it's really great to have partners like that and to be able to help them source the items that you take out, and help fund the projects that you do. I think that's great. The last thing I want to just talk about briefly, and I think it's a really important part, and I mentioned it earlier, the documentary for Ithaca. And we talked before the episode where we recorded, where you have footage from this latest cleanup. There's definitely a focus on communication and showing what you're seeing. When did that focus start? Like, why did you decide to do the documentary, and then why did you decide to take more footage this time? I assume to create potentially another documentary, or some items and some content from that. Why the push on content right now? Has that always been a part of your organization, or is it just recently with this?
I would say in the first 3 years when we started, we were really learning by doing. We did everything
Right.
out of passion. We did
Yeah.
a lot of cleanups, but we didn't document them well enough. Either the quality or the quantity of the footage was not good enough. And basically, we had to learn simply by ourselves. It was no push
Hmm.
by no one. That if we don't have good communication materials about certain activities, then the activity doesn't exist. No one will believe
Right.
that we actually did remove this amount of waste. We can talk about the problem underwater, how terrible it is to marine life, but if we can't show a photo next to it, then it's just a word of
Yeah.
somebody. So it's
For
purely
sure.
for education, awareness raising purposes. And one picture says more than 1,000 words. People visualize, understand, care better about things if
Mhm.
they seen it at least on a photo or footage, if not in real life. So there's been I would say a conscious decision after the fifth year of our operation to put more emphasis parallel with the activities and the quality of the activities
Mhm.
on documenting them in order to show it to the public. So it's not a ghost farm specific thing. We do it with every cleanup, every school program, every activity we do.
I think it's great because I think you're right. I think we're visual learners as a species, and we love to tell stories, but we love to watch stories, especially in today's days. And to put it on the internet, to put it on YouTube, to put it on social media, I think is a really smart way of growing and scaling sort of the education process, not only from a local level but an international level. And obviously this is a problem internationally. It's not just local in Greece. It's not just in Europe. It's in North America. It's in Asia. It's in Australia. It's everywhere. And this is a problem that is not just going to be done by one organization. So to share, the stories, to share how you are doing things, it's unbelievable. And, I want to thank you not only for coming on the podcast to tell us all about it, but I want to thank you for the work that you guys do, the sacrifice that you guys make to be out at sea, to help people, and communities to, sort of take those nets out, give their communities back, give their bays back, give their coastline back, less pollution, save their fish. I think is a really great way of building community relationships as well as conserving the marine environment. So I want to thank you so much for that. And I just want to ask, what's your next? I know this. You're really in this project. I'm not sure if you're done this project, but what's the next project on the horizon?
Actually, we are planning to do another ghost farm in September or early autumn.
Okay.
Sorry for being boring, but it's
not at all. It's exciting.
It's becoming an addiction because first you realize the size of the problem and then your power to do something about it. We didn't plan it, so it happened recently that we got to learn this, that we can do it. We are also very grateful to our sponsor Hyundai, which is the main sponsor of the Ghost Farm cleanups. The cleanup doesn't finishes with the cleanup itself. All the materials which we recover is being processed either locally or internationally into recycled materials. And Hyundai is, for example, using the regenerated nylon yarn coming from the fishing nets and other nylon waste into car mats. So in some models, you can find car mats and other type of material. We also recover some fishing nets we just shipped already from last week cleanup to Bracenet to Germany. So we will distribute it all. So the story doesn't end or finishes with the cleanup. And it seems that later this year we will have another big one.
Okay, well, that's awesome. I mean, it's great. Like I said, it's needed. And who else is going to do it? But you guys have become the experts to do it for Healthy Seas. But I think it's also a great opportunity to make people aware of ghost nets and the different forms that they come in. Not only just sort of, we don't know where they came from, they're just floating in the ocean, to these are ghost farms. And this is a unique phenomenon. Well, maybe not as unique as we first anticipated, but it's something that can be cleaned up. Should be cleaned up, and it's just a matter of finding ways to do it and finding the people to do it. So I want to thank you again for coming on the podcast and doing the work that you do. And we'd love to have you back on, Veronica, or anybody from your organization, to be able to talk more about these ghost nets and ghost farms and how you're cleaning them up and what you're learning from each project.
Thank you, Andrew, and thanks to all the listeners for your support and attention.
Thank you, Veronica, for joining me on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast during this Oceans Week. Folks, like I said, this interview was awesome. There was a lot of information that was given, but just showing, what organizations can do. A lot of times we hear some of the policy things that organizations do, which is great. It has its own place. But then there are organizations who actually do the work, even though they're waiting for government to do the work. And I think that's admirable, the way the organization is doing it. They know that the policy is going to take some time. It's going to take some time for government to take action. In this case, it seems like they're just trying to make sure that the law is taken into account, and that, these the companies who own the fish farms are responsible for taking down the fish farms when they abandon it, right? And that just, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised that happens. But just the respect that I have for Healthy Seas that Veronica leads, is ridiculous because they're doing the work. They're doing the work that these fish farm companies should have been doing, but they're just doing the work because they know it needs to be done. And why continue to pollute the environment when you don't have to? Why not protect the ocean when you have the means, you have the expertise, and now you're getting the experience, and not only ghost nets, which you never know who belongs to, who belongs to that net or who that net belongs to, but you also know exactly who you're cleaning up after, and maybe later on they can recoup some of that money. But partners such as Hyundai and others have really worked to ensure that these projects can get going and that they're fully funded. And I think that is extremely important when we see this happen. We see ghost nets being taken out, whether they're ghost nets just floating in the ocean, we don't know who they belong to, or whether they're ghost nets in a fish farm that just has been abandoned and shouldn't have been abandoned before the cleanup happens. And we see this in other sort of fields or other sort of sectors. We see this in the oil and gas sector or in the mining sector where things aren't cleaned up all the way because the law doesn't require it or that's not enforced. So they just get up. These companies who make millions and millions of dollars off the backs of the citizens who work there and the citizens who live there, and there's no benefit, right? There's just really no benefit at all to the local communities who are affected by these fish farms or by these oil and gas wastewater ponds or mining wastewater ponds or just mining in general. It can be a lot of stress on a community. It could cause a lot of sickness. It could be really bad. In this case, ghost fish farms should be cleaned up. They shouldn't be around if they're not being used. They cause a lot of pollution. They can capture fish in nets or sea turtles or dolphins in nets. And they don't even know it's there. These are things that need to be cleaned up, and Healthy Seas is doing it. And I really, really respect them for doing that work that should be done by the companies, but they're doing it because, why wait when you can do it yourself? And I really, really admire that. So that's the interview, folks. If you want to have more information or you want to get more information, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes for Healthy Seas and Veronica, and you can check them out there for the reading. I highly recommend it. Follow them, support them however you can. Sometimes it just means a follow, sometimes it means a donation, sometimes it just means sharing their website and sharing their social media sites just so that other people can get access to them. But that's it for today's episode. Don't forget, if you want to sign up for the Ocean Community app, just go to speakupforblue.com/Ocean app, all one word, APP at the end. So that's speakupforblue.com/Ocean app, APP, all one word. Sign up now so that you can get access eventually to the free app that's going to be available. There'll be some premium offerings, but right off the bat, it's going to be free. I just want all the community in one spot. That's what I'm really looking forward to. Sharing content, whether it be podcasts, whether it be videos, short form, long form, it doesn't matter. I'm looking forward to seeing you in that app. And that's going to be mid-July, but I'm going to be providing video updates and written updates quite often. And so I can't wait for you to see that. So that's it for today's episode in this Oceans Week on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.